News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
For almost 2 centuries, George Canning held the record for shortest-serving British Prime Minister. His ministry was a flop, and it lasted just shy of 4 months back in 1827. Liz Truss has decisively shattered that record. Her ministry has lasted barely a third of Mr. Canning's, and in fairness to George Canning, he died in office. Otherwise, who knows how long he'd have staggered on for. By contrast, poor Miss Truss, still young and in rude health, is doomed to a kind of living death, a bit like Kim Campbell, the Queen's Canadian Prime Minister, who served for 4 months and then led the Tories to an electoral wipeout that left them with just 2 seats. But Liz Truss has been denied even the consolation of democratic denouement, done in by, well, we know not whom and we know not why. We should have some decent human sympathy for her. It's not easy when you become PM in September to have to say this in October.
I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
Well, on the other hand, way back in September, Boris Johnson was also a dead man walking, and now apparently he's the coming man. Most promising newcomer on the Tory backbenchers, he's just shy of 40 votes supporting him and his return as Prime Minister. We'll try and wrap our heads around the crazy in the next hour with Kate Hoey, Christopher Chope, Ken Livingstone, Lois Perry, James Melville and Leilani Dowding. Plus the most important part of the show, that is you. Email me, gbviews@gbnews, especially if you're an aspiring Prime Minister. We've got a couple of days spare next week where we're auditioning new Prime Ministers on, I think, on Wednesday, and then they'll serve their full term on Thursday. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews. It's all coming your way after Polly Middlehurst on a jam-packed news night at Westminster with all the latest news. Polly.
Mark, thank you. Good evening to you. Certainly very busy, Mark. And as most of you know by now, a new Prime Minister will be elected by the end of next week, according to the Conservative Party, with Liz Truss standing down today after just 44 days in the job. Announcing her resignation earlier on outside Downing Street, the Prime Minister said she had been unable to deliver the mandate which she had been elected upon. She's now the shortest-serving Prime Minister in British history when she leaves office.
I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This morning I met the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, doesn't want a leadership election. He wants a general election.
Well, what a mess. And this is not just a soap opera at the top of the Tory party. It's doing huge damage to our economy and to the reputation of our country. And the public are paying with higher prices, with higher mortgages. So we can't have a revolving door of chaos. We can't have another experiment at the top of the Tory party. There is an alternative, and that's a stable Labour government. And the public are entitled to have their say, and that's why there should be a general election.
Well, in the race to replace Liz Truss, the political website Guido Fawkes claims Boris Johnson now has over a third of the required backing from Tory MPs. Mark was saying almost 40. The correct number, to be precise, is 38 backers at the moment. It's being updated all the time. Rishi Sunak has 27 backers. Penny Mordaunt has 11 out of the 100 minimum required. Meanwhile, the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, says there are no words to describe what she is saying is the utter shambles the Tories are in.
I don't see, firstly, how there is any possibility of this dysfunctional, broken Tory party uniting behind any alternative Prime Minister, as I said a moment ago, let alone one that would be in the public interest. But all of these names, I mean, Boris Johnson, it is ridiculous to suggest that a Prime Minister who just, 2 or 3 months ago, resigned in deep disgrace could come back and be Prime Minister again. And if that happens, all that does is prove beyond a shadow of a doubt of how utterly broken UK Westminster politics is.
Well, in news away from Westminster today, people working with children should be legally required to report cases of child sexual abuse or face prosecution themselves. That's one of the key findings of an independent 7-year inquiry. It says some institutions are failing to protect children and calls for a new child protection authority to be established in England and Wales. And lastly, it's emerged a Russian fighter jet released a missile close to a British aircraft over the Black Sea last month. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace told the House of Commons the incident occurred in international airspace while an RAF surveillance aircraft was on patrol. He says Russia is blaming a technical malfunction. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Mark Steyn.
You know that story right at the end there from Polly about the Russian jet accidentally firing on the RAF may actually turn out to be the most significant story of the night. It's not yet a week since Kwasi Kwarteng left the IMF meeting in Washington, got in his car to the airport and found they'd booked him a one-way ticket on the Oblivion Express. There have been many exciting developments since then. Rumours that the Lord Privy Seal is on his way out and that the Parliamentary Under-Secretary at the Department of Digital Media, Culture, Sport, Artichokes, Snoods, Pink Unicorns, Bepenist Women and Grade 1 Ha-Has is considering her position, all culminating in today's resignation of a senior minister. Which one was it again? But you know, after a few days of shuffling the court eunuchs, you can't help noticing that while the politicians may change, the politics doesn't. Every day You still can't see a GP, your energy bill goes up, the public finances get worse. Every day the border in the Irish Sea hardens, and every night the border in the English Channel softens. And the RNLI ferry more quote-unquote asylum seekers to Dover and Folkestone. Gee, it's almost as if all the third-rate repertory theatre of court intrigue is designed to distract you from the fact that all the important stuff is now beyond the reach of democratic politicking. Immigration is beyond politics. The cost of living is beyond politics. The industrial-scale gang rape of young girls up and down England is beyond politics, even if it is, as Suella Braverman said, just a fortnight back, quote, a stain on our country. Whatever happened to that Suella Braverman lady, by the way? The new Home Secretary is silent on such matters, so the stain on our country spreads. Still and all, today's events are important, if only because we seem now to have reached the stage in the great farce of British political life, where not merely the office holders, but the great offices of state themselves have been reduced to a total laughingstock. Let's start tonight with Baroness Hoey. Kate, you and I have talked before, and you have said on air that you actually had quite a regard for Liz Truss, and you thought she did good things when it came to the Northern Ireland Protocol. What do you make of the last week's events?
Well, like everyone, I've been living from hour to hour almost on this, but I have some sympathy for Liz Truss. I think what she's gone through in the last few weeks, you know, with Her Majesty's death and coming in and suddenly having to deal with, you know, this terribly difficult economic situation. So I have sympathy for her on a personal level. And, you know, I had a meeting, actually, I was in a meeting this week with her on Tuesday evening where we were discussing the Northern Ireland Protocol. And she's very different in a small meeting, and she's much more personable and much more able to kind of communicate than unfortunately she seemed to be able to do to big meetings. However, I mean, it was inevitable probably that once the same people who went out to get Boris really seemed to be just going out to get her. They didn't like the fact that she was actually changing some of the policies in a direction that was more in keeping with perhaps those red wall seats that voted Conservative and won the Conservative Senate majority. And I think that's the real danger now, obviously, for the Conservative Party, that their members of Parliament may think that, you know, by putting in Rishi Sunak or someone with similar views to Rishi, that will change things. It won't get the red wall seat votes back. Absolutely not.
Well, let's actually focus on that, because that's and other people have said what you said, that when you're 5 or 6 people round a table, Liz Truss can be a very effective and impressive person. She didn't connect with the wider electorate. She didn't connect, never mind the British people, she never connected with the Tory base, really. Whereas Boris Johnson, whatever you think of him, is able to do that. He's able to, you can drop him in some town and nobody's ever heard of, and he'll walk around the town square and he will connect with people. There are issues about what he does then when he's round the table in a small group. Is there anybody, do you see anybody here who can actually do both things, be effective with policy in a small room as an executive and connect with ordinary people?
Well, it's very difficult. I mean, Boris was a superb at campaigning, at just making people feel that he was interested in them, in chatting to them, in getting people to really treat him as if he was somebody who was different from them, but actually could relate to them. I have my difficulties with Rishi Sunak, definitely. And after all, I don't understand why Boris got into such trouble by getting one of those police COVID tickets, whatever they call them. Rishi also did. So, I mean, he has that to live with. But also, So I you know,
that's I
really,
actually
the only thing that Rishi's got going for him. Sorry. Mark, I'm just saying the only
no,
thing...
No,
that
I just wanted to... I wanted to say that that's a very important point, Kate. If the objection if the objection to Boris is that he did not bind himself by the rules he imposed on the rest of us, Rishi Sunak didn't either, and that has already been adjudicated in law, and he's paid a fine for it.
Yes, and it's been very, very quickly forgotten, hasn't it, by all those people who've been pushing him. And there is that sort of coalition of people who really didn't like Boris because he was determined on the issue of Brexit. And I'm afraid behind all of this there is a big. And I know people say now we shouldn't be using that word Remainer anymore, but a lot of people who would love to have someone as the Prime Minister who would very slowly, very carefully move us nearer to the European Union, to be in a situation where at some stage, not immediately, but at some stage in the future. And of course, why I felt Liz Truss had some credibility was because she actually wrote the protocol bill. She was determined to get that bill through. It's now in the Lords. It comes up for committee next week. It would be very interesting to see if the candidates ultimately also commit themselves to not U-turning on the protocol bill, because if they do that, then I think really they have given in to those people who just want us to go back into the European Union.
Well, let me ask you on that. Isn't the danger slightly bigger than that now? And that is that there are a significant number, perhaps even a majority on the Tory benches and certainly on the opposition benches, who not only do they not want to override the Northern Ireland Protocol, they actually like it so much they'd like it to be extended to Scotland, England and Wales and put us back in the single market.
Yes, they see the protocol as a way of a sort of halfway house to the rest of the United Kingdom going back into the single market. But, people who voted to leave voted to really be in charge of their own destiny. And if you stay in the single market and you stay in the customs union, you're not. And therefore, those people who are behind the scenes pushing this are completely out of touch with the people who voted to leave. And the other thing, of course, the members of the Conservative Party did get that vote. I think that behind the scenes they'll stitch it up so that there's only one candidate in the end, and the Conservative members won't get a vote. And all that will do is make the party even more divided and play into the hands of the Labour Party.
Bingo, Kate. You're absolutely right. I think the plan is to get a candidate. There'll be two candidates, but the one candidate will emerge so strong from the MP's vote that the second candidate drops out, and it's a fait accompli. That's the stitch up they're working on, and you were absolutely right, by the way, in people that we no longer even remember, like Sajid Javid, when you said he wasn't going to be Prime Minister, and 3 days later his prime ministerial campaign was dead. And you also said Rishi Sunak wasn't going to be Prime Minister, so we're going to...
I did. I also said Rishi.
We're going to hold you.
I'm still hoping that he won't.
Okay. I don't think he connects either. I think that's certainly true. Thank you very much, Kate Hoey. Let us welcome Christopher Chope, the member for Christchurch. Sir Christopher was booked on the show to talk about the victims of the COVID vaccines, whose day in Parliament this was meant to be. We're going to get back to that next week, assuming we get a day between imploding governments. Frankly, I'd much rather talk about those vaccine victims. But Sir Christopher is here for the politics of the night. And you're basically steamed about all this kind of chaos. And you think we need just to bust out of the cycle of chaos once and for all?
I do just that, Mark. And I'm absolutely disgusted by the behaviour of my colleagues. And I think that the only way forward now for the Conservative Party, and more importantly for the country, is for there to be a general election called by whoever is elected as the leader next week. And then we will be able to have a proper debate across the nation on what's important in terms of economic policy and the decisions that we take. And I think that gives the Conservatives the best chance that they're going to have of coming back from what otherwise looks a dire situation.
Well, you seem very sure about that, so I take it you're not put off by these opinion polls showing Labour 33 points ahead and on course to win 507 seats, which would mean that a 52-seat Scottish National Party would be His Majesty's loyal opposition. You have no fear that that's the territory we're looking at come election day?
Well, I fear that we are going to find it very difficult at the next general election, but I think it's going to be a heck of a lot more difficult if we try and delay that day. And why doesn't the Conservative Party go back on the front foot and gain the confidence of the people by saying, look, we realise we're in a complete mess. We realise that our parliamentary party is ungovernable. And I think that's another issue we can come on to. And as a result, we think that we trust the British people to take their decision on who should run this country at this time of economic and political crisis.
Do you think there is a unity candidate out there? Because when you look at these names, Lady Hoey is not very impressed by the thought of Rishi Sunak at number 10. And there are other people who don't want to see... No, and nor am I. So I hope many of your colleagues feel the same. But there are people who do not want to see Boris Johnson back because that just means more Partygate, more stuff like that. And then there are other people who are looking around for a neither of the above candidate, and all the neither of the above candidates seem to have fled. Is there such a thing as a unity candidate?
I haven't found or seen one yet. And I think the problem is that there's so much ill discipline, ill will within the parliamentary party that anybody who becomes Prime Minister will not be able to command a mandate from the Conservative parliamentary party unless that person has also got a mandate from the British people. That's why I think a general election is the right answer, not just for our party, but also for the nation.
So even though it is constitutionally correct that the King is entitled to call on whoever can command a majority in the House of Commons, as a practical matter, after the last 3, 4, 5 months, that's not doable in a real-world sense.
Well, Mark, the irony is that neither Boris nor Liz were ever the victims of a motion of no confidence carried against them in the House of Commons. If they had been, then one would have been able to say they didn't command a majority within the House of Commons. What I regret is that both of them resigned when I think they still did enjoy a majority within the House of Commons. And so we're now in a situation of our own making where I think the only way out is to have this general election I'm talking about.
So in fact, your point is that if we have inflicted damage on the constitutional order, it's been by these frivolous leadership elections rather than by anything that we actually should have done if we were doing things properly.
Exactly. It's been by the systematic undermining of first Boris Johnson and now Liz Truss by people who, for their own particular reasons of ambition, wanted to get rid of Boris, and they thought that they would inherit the crown. When they didn't inherit the crown, they then wanted to get rid of the person who had inherited the crown, Liz. And now they think, having got rid of Liz, that they're going to be able to get Rishi in. Well, I think they've got another thing coming. If Rishi was to be elected as leader of the Conservative Party, he would be an incredibly divisive figure, and he doesn't enjoy the support of a large number of Conservative MPs, and he certainly doesn't enjoy the support of a lot of people in the party in the country. So I think that if we could find this magical unity candidate about whom you speak, that might be a way forward, but I don't see any such person emerging.
Just a quick final question. You know, older viewers will remember turbulent times in the Tory party. Heath and Thatcher. Alec Hume, the 14th Earl, oh, he's not modern and trendy enough, we have to go to a new system. If you remember those, or even Suez, Anthony Eden, if you remember those disputes, there's something, the insanity now is at a fever pitch that would be unimaginable, even going back to Eden or Alec Hume or Heath or whatever. I mean, is this party salvageable?
Well, I don't know. We're about to elect the 10th leader of the Conservative Party since I became a Conservative MP, which gives you some sort of a scale on this. No, I think it's going to be, we're in very troubled times. And what has broken down is the basic discipline, the respect for the office of Prime Minister, the respect for the leadership of the party. And we saw in the House of Commons last night an example of colleagues, many of them new to Parliament, relatively speaking, who don't really understand how it should operate. And it should operate on the basis of respect for the people who have been elected to their positions. And Liz Truss was elected by 58% of the Conservative Party membership to her position. But that was never accepted by a lot of my colleagues who are undemocratic by nature.
No, that's right. And as I said earlier, it's coming to hold the office in contempt, not just the office holder. Thank you, Sir Christopher Chope. And by the way, when he points out that he has seen 10 Tory leaders since he entered Parliament, you remember how we talked just before the Queen's death about how Liz Truss was Her Majesty's 15th UK Prime Minister. The way things are going, the King is likely to rack up that number and pass it in his first 18 months. We're going to get to your thoughts next. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Plus, still to come, Ken Livingstone, Lois Perry, James Melville, Leilani Dowding, all on the turmoil of the present and what lies ahead. Don't touch that dial. We're coming right back.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christopher. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
GB News is the People's Channel, so let's hear the voice of the people. We ran a poll. Do you support Boris Johnson returning to Downing Street? Yes, 68.1%. No, 31.9%. So 2-1 in favour of Boris returning. I'm not sure That's a scientific sample. It might well be that he has had untold legions of his love children call in and actually skew the results there. If you're wondering about the people who count, the members of the parliamentary party, Boris has 38 votes, Rishi is on 29, and Penny Mordaunt is on 14. Let's hear your other points. John says it's either Bojo or Larry the cat. Now you're talking. Now you're talking. It is time for a cat to shatter the glass ceiling and become the first feline prime minister in the history of the United Kingdom. Bojo and Larry are equal in my estimation, but no one else comes close. At least Bojo has a people's mandate, and Larry has as much to offer the role as anybody else. Under this scenario, if you remember the late seasons of Dallas, going back whatever it was, 30 years, at one point they killed off Bobby Ewing and their numbers tanked. So a year later they brought him back and wrote off the previous season as a bad dream. And Pam Ewing stepped into the shower, and there was Bobby Ewing soaping himself as if nothing had happened. So in this scenario, the Tory party is soaping itself in the shower, and suddenly the door opens, Liz Truss was just a bad dream, and Boris steps into the shower and starts soaping the Tories back all over again, as is his wont. Personally, I would rather write off a lot more seasons of Tory party history and have the third Marquess of Salisbury step into the shower and start soaping my back. Testament 131 says, I can't fathom out how people think his personality traits, this is Boris again, are the reason we are in this situation and why we would be in it again if he returned. His speech when he resigned, not for 1 second could he understand what he had done wrong and what the fuss was about. That's ancient history. Man, it was like, what was it? It was like 5 weeks ago? Nobody even remembers that Britain. You might as well be talking about the Stone Age. Lynn says, anybody but Rishi, ABR. Carve it on the back of your car and drive around with it. Sarah says Boris was outed by his so-called own party trying to save their own necks. Look where it got them. Bring him back and try and sort out all the crap the wannabes couldn't do without him. I'm just saying. We're all just saying. Nobody knows any more than that. Lois Perry from car26.org is back with us, as is Ken Livingstone. You know Ken, he's the former mayor of London and thus, in a certain sense, the man we have to blame for Boris Johnson politician. Ken, let's start with you. How do you feel about, so far, in the commitments of Tory members of Parliament, Boris is ahead?
I know. I find it deeply depressing. He was completely incompetent as Prime Minister, and I can't think how a Tory MP is thinking of bringing him back. I mean, if I was a Tory MP, I'd be working for Rishi Sunak, because I think he's competent, he came into politics to make life better. Boris came into politics just to be a celebrity. He doesn't have an agenda. You look, the 8 years he was Mayor of London, the only thing he did, he built the cable car to nowhere. And still today, it's almost empty all day.
No, I know. I think that actually should be renamed the Liz Truss cabinet cable car, because that's also pretty empty. You know, Lois, just from what Ken was saying there, Rishi Sunak, you know, with all his strange, sinister globalist links, his billionaire father-in-law, and his Rishi is the kind of guy that in sane political times Ken Livingstone wouldn't have wanted to go anywhere near, surely.
Well, I mean, the fact that Ken endorses Rishi shows us everything that we need to know. You know, he is a socialist, he is a con-socialist, and he's been put in place, been a globalist coup, by, you know, by people that want a billionaire financier in charge of the country. And Penny Mordaunt had Bill Gates writing the foreword to her book. They're both totally part of the coup. They mustn't get anywhere near power whatsoever. And actually, the fact that they don't want Boris back actually makes me think maybe he should come back. But he needs to scrap all of the net zero stuff. And saying that he didn't achieve anything when he actually did get Brexit to happen is a bit disingenuous. But what has happened to Liz is absolutely disgusting. And when I was on your show the other night and I said that it's been a globalist coup, it has been a globalist coup. And you know what? They're about to do the coronation of their Saint Rishi, and we should all be very, very, very frightened at the moment.
There is a point to that, isn't there, Ken, that it doesn't seem healthy in what's supposed to be a democratic age that the guy who lost the last competitive leadership election is now being fast-tracked into the winner's position. Something's gone kind of slightly wrong, whether it's just in this party or whether it's in British politics as a whole.
Yeah, but we're not like in America where everyone gets to vote for who's president. I mean, the question of the Prime Minister is usually decided by MPs. And now they've introduced this rule that you've got to be nominated by 100. Well, given there's only about 350 Tory MPs, that means the best choice you might get will just be between 3. It might only be between 2. And I mean, I don't know what... I think if Boris comes back to power, I'll have to immigrate.
Or even emigrate.
Well, now, for God's sake, don't say that. There's going to be a stampede in the Tory caucus and he'll... Oh, breaking news, he's now up to 157 MPs. I must say, Lois, I don't want to pick on Ken, but I'm slightly... and he's quite right, by the way, to point out that with the way we always used to do it is that it's the MPs who get to decide who they support. It's pretty clear now that actually just saying, oh, yes, you, Mrs. Scroggins, at 47B Acacia Gardens, we're going to give you a vote too. That's all just rubbish for show, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, with a political party, if you don't have a base, you don't exist. And the Tory party members have been told that they've been allowed to select the candidate. They've been given the opportunity to do so. They've voted, and with a particular mandate, Liz Truss had a very specific, and it was an energy independent manifesto, pro-growth, low taxes, and that's all been completely overthrown. And there will be a mass exodus of Conservative Party members. They will join other parties. And my understanding is that there are already talks happening with Conservative MPs who want to go over to Reform. And you know what? If enough go over, that might be the only way they save their seats. I hope Nigel Farage unites everybody, him and Richard Tice. But if the Tories want to save themselves, they're going to have to bring Boris back. If the Tories want to implode and put Keir Starmer in, then go on, put your globalist plant in, put Rishi in, because that's always been the plan. The coronation on the 28th of October. I quite like Boris to win, just to prove that I'm wrong, and there hasn't been a coup, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Since you brought up Keir Starmer, I wouldn't have thought, Ken, that Sir Keir is your cup of tea by any means.
He loves him.
He has done a fairly effective job of detoxifying the Labour brand, by which I mean the Corbyn win. And it's incredible that there seems no one on the Tory side who can do the equivalent on their party. Is it because actually there is no dominant faction on the Tory side and therefore there's no obvious minority to squash and sit on?
Well, the Tory party is completely split all over the place. But Keir Starmer, I think, although obviously I have political disagreements about some of his policies, I think he could be our best Prime Minister since Clement Attlee. He came into politics to make life better, not to be a celebrity. He's only recently came into Parliament. Before that, he spent his lifetime prosecuting murderers and rapists. Here's a man who knows how to do things, to run things. I think he will transform our economy. He will get real growth, improve services. So every day I'm just daydreaming that Keir Starmer can be here really quick, really soon.
Hang on a minute. Is this the same man we're talking about that refused to investigate and prosecute Jimmy Savile? The same man who refused to investigate and bring prosecutions with the Rotherham girls, the girls that were being raped in front of everybody's eyes, and he didn't care at all. And actually, he was a human rights lawyer, so he actually spent his time defending the indefensible most of the time.
He was presiding over this huge department. Some of the people in that department made wrong decisions.
The buck stopped with him. He let girls be raped because it was politically unexpedient for the Labour Party, which he was obviously planning to go into at some point, because I believe he's part of the globalist coup as well.
I was mayor, lots of things went wrong, but not because I did them, but people in the machine got them wrong.
Yeah, but he wasn't presiding as mayor of London. He was basically the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, which is a manageable unit and very hierarchical. And that's basically his only executive experience. Do you think that executive experience actually is in any way impressive?
I think it is impressive because, yes, some people got away with their crimes, but he ended up sending hundreds, perhaps thousands, to prison. He was damn good. He's run a good department. He will be our best Prime Minister, perhaps since Clement Attlee. I think he's there to make our life better.
Yeah, well, unless he was, unless he happened to be a paedophile.
Well, we've got the highest tax rate since Clement Attlee, just under the Tories. So it's not going to be much of a change actually putting Clement Attlee back. But let me just close it out with Ken's bigger point there, which is that he says Boris is just a celebrity. Half these people just want to be celebrities. The problem is, isn't it, is that if you go for the non-celebrity like Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak, you just wind up with someone who doesn't connect with voters, Lois.
Well, they will connect if they make our economy better and people's lives better. But literally, when I came into politics back in the 60s, whether you were Labour or Tory, you came in to make things better for people, not to be a celebrity. And I want to get back. And, I mean, Labour, for the first time, I think we'll have our best Prime Minister since Clement Attlee.
The people voted for Boris Johnson. He had an 80-seat majority. He does connect with the voters. He's mad on the CO2 stuff and the net zero stuff. But the Tories want to save themselves. They need to bring Boris back. But if they don't, then I hope that Nigel and Richard Tice bring something new and bring a new centre-right back into politics, because they are con-socialists and communists that we have at the moment.
Let me just tell you, I mean, I bumped into Max Hastings, and for 7 years, while Max Hastings was the editor of the Daily Telegraph, Boris worked for him. And Max Hastings said to me, never leave Boris alone with your wife or your wallet.
Well,
that's very true.
That's true from personal experience.
I know it. Not with I can certainly testify to a bit of that from his specking days. But thank you very much, Lois.
That doesn't make him bad as a Prime Minister.
We're way beyond all that. Breaking news: Ken has name-checked Clement Attlee so much that he's now 23 points ahead in the poll. Whatever he is. The first Earl Attlee, KG, I think he's retired to the Bahamas. He's 173, but he's way ahead in the polls thanks to Ken plugging him. Good for you. Thank you, Lois. Thank you, Ken. Stump the Side Looms. You can ask me anything. GBNews at gbnews.uk. And our chum, Leilani Dowding, is standing by. She was right about a lot of this stuff months ago. And we have James Melville. We're coming back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
If you're just tuning in now, you've missed Therese Coffey's premiership. She was Prime Minister for 27 minutes. She went to Buckingham Palace and kissed hands with the King, then took a cab back to Downing Street and resigned. So that is a new record right there. Breaking news, Ken Livingstone did such a fantastic hatchet job on Boris that he's got the support of two more MPs now. He's up to 40. Rishi is stalled at 29. We need hit parade music for this. Bam, 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 bam. And Penny Mordaunt goes up 2 places to big hit sound number 14. Everyone's calling it a globalist coup these days, but Leilani Dowding was doing so on this show back in the summer. And James Melville has also been calling it a globalist coup, and both of them join me now. James, what do you make of what's happened?
Oh, it's clowns leading the circus. I mean, the only winner today is the lettuce with the Daily Star. I mean, it seems to me that might have an opportunity to be next leader. But, I mean, being a bit serious about it, the real losers in all of this stuff are the British public once again. For a year now, we've had increased inflation, cost of living crisis, and yet most of this year has been spent with the Tory party conducting a grubby leadership contest. This is now part 2, which is basically not solving anything. There's internal fighting with the Tory party that's been going on for a number of years now, but it seems to be that they're more concerned about indulging in game show politics rather than actually sorting out the thing that they're paid for, and that is the cost of living crisis. We're getting millions of people facing a zero-sum game choice about either heating or eating, and they're looking on at this stuff, Mark, aghast. I mean, Liz Truss, 44 days in power. She wasn't up to the job. There was a whiff of witch huntery about the whole thing, but they shouldn't have chosen her in the first place. No. She's been in cabinet for years. No. They know what she's like. Her presentation skills and her salesmanship are, she hasn't got any of that stuff. So it was inevitable it was going to end like this. But meanwhile, the most important thing is we have an economy that has hit the skids a long time ago, and politicians who seem to be indulging in a vaudevillian Game of Thrones. And it's not good enough. So part of me looks at this with a sense of amusement as someone who's left of centre, but my overriding feeling right now is a sense of anger, and I'm sure that's shared with millions of people.
Well, let's just explore that a bit more, Leilani, because if the idea is that this thing has gone on for months, and meanwhile the so-called government of a so-called G7 nation, a member of the Big Five permanent members on the UN Security Council, hasn't actually addressed anything that matters, isn't whether you're talking like Lois Perry was about the poor girls being raped in Rotherham, or the migrants on the shore, or the Northern Ireland Protocol, or the cost of living. And instead we've been following this awful third-rate vaudeville, as James was calling it. Doesn't that suggest that this is actually what's intended to happen? This is what democracy is now. You watch the third-rate repertory theatre and you don't notice that your cost of living is screwed, your energy bill has soared up the top right-hand corner of the graph, and that everything is going, and the NHS doesn't work, and Northern Ireland's out of the Union, and isn't it intentional as a distraction? Wouldn't that be the logical conclusion?
Well, this is the thing as well, Mark, and add in crime increasing, the enormous NHS waiting list, all of the above. So, you know, when I was on your show in July, it just, you know, I've never claimed to be a political expert, but I have a very good intuition for BS and a very good radar for it. And it didn't sit with me the way in which Jabbit and Sunak resigned over ethical reasons, as I said. So, you know, they're the most unethical people. I've never trusted politicians. They're two cheeks of the same bottom to me. But in the last few days, we have really seen that democracy is dead. And not only is democracy dead, but the illusion of democracy is now dead. Because there's no way that this is just some mess or some shambles. This has been orchestrated. This has absolutely been orchestrated. You know, for people to think this is because Liz Truss, you know, it was over a 5p tax cut is absurd. This is completely and utterly orchestrated. And I think, as Lois Perry has said, there's WEF puppets installed, the financial institutes are involved, globalists and technocrats, and mainstream massive media is in control. And so, you know, to me, I really don't think this is like some little error or mishap that's happened.
No. So it's a plan being passed off as a shambles to install Rishi Sunak, the IMF candidate, the Klaus Schwab candidate, in number 10. It's not paranoid to think that, is it, James?
No, it isn't. I mean, basically, on the last couple of years, all bets are off. You know, the conspiracy theorists of 2022 are the profit of 2020, the profits of 22. You know, if someone had said to me, basically, even things like vaccine passports and the influence of the WEF and sort of penetrating cabinets, as Klaus Schwab said back in 2020, I'd have been a bit sceptical. But like everyone else, I've gone on a bit of a journey and sort of question everything now. We've now had a prime minister that's lasted literally a month and a half. And so basically she wasn't basically adhering to certain rules of the game. So we're going to get another one. So I think what it is, I think Lanny's right. I think it's a combination of forces. But meanwhile, these individuals are getting paid by us. They're getting paid by us to have this Game of Thrones that's going on and the string pulling that's inevitably going elsewhere through finance, media, technocrats and so on. But it's not serving the best interests of the people. And we've got to find a way of getting more people. I hate using the phrase wake up because it sounds a bit patronising. We need more people to be aware of what's going on, try and join the dots, scrutinise everything, and actually really take a step back and question who is serving in the best interests of the public and who isn't. Now, Rishi Sunak, to me, seems like the world's most self-entitled politician. He's basically trying to take down he has taken down effectively the second Prime Minister this year. What are his motives? Are his motives to serve the people or basically serve himself and those who are backing him? So I think Leanne's right. I think we're looking at an era now whereby effectively the string pullers have taken charge, not the people who are supposed to take charge, and that's the people.
How do we know, Leilani, that a politician in a leadership contest isn't just one of those puppets? I mean, Liz Truss, for her first 3 weeks, it was royal mourning, so politics was on hold. Then she does her first thing. The IMF decides they don't like that, and next thing you know, she's gone. How do we know these characters in this awful vaudevillian Game of Thrones, as James calls it, are actually creatures with an independent, organic existence of their own?
Well, this is the problem, Mark. It's really hard to be able to tell. I mean, you know, Ken Livingstone mentioned about Boris wanting to be a celebrity, but I'd rather a politician wanting that than to be greasing the palms of his friends with, you know, PPE deals or net zero, with the whole net zero thing, and their investments into net zero and all the rest of it. So it's really hard. And I guess you have to look at who they talk to, whether they go to Davos, who's kind of embedded in their circle, and those people. And to people who haven't done the research, it sounds like, if you're talking about them talking with Bill Gates, that it could be some conspiracy theorist. But, Bill Gates is literally at the moment saying this energy crisis long-term could actually be great for us because it helps him, with him and his friends that all invested billions into these new clean energy systems. So you've got to look at, where the money's coming from, what they're talking about, who they embed themselves with, and it can be hard to tell.
But James, Ken Livingstone has been around for decades, and I don't agree with him on pretty much any. I don't agree with him on Irish Republicans and Islamic terrorists and all kinds of other stuff. But I always thought of him as a fairly upfront believer in the wacky causes he espouses. Now he tells me he's all on board with Rishi Sunak. You start to wonder, wait a minute, is this like something that's beyond partisan politics now? That the whole game it's a vaudevillian Game of Thrones in which there is in fact only one ultimate throne and all the warriors are actually on the same team.
Well, it appears to be that way. I mean, it feels like politics in the last 2 years, the catalyst was COVID, politics is now inverted. It's not about left versus right anymore. It's now about right versus wrong, or authoritarianism versus, I suppose, libertarianism as well. But fundamentally, the main aspect of all this, the people, seems to be forgotten. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And basically, I think the public have just switched off. Because, as Lanny mentioned, it's basically cheeks in the same backside. You get another prime minister, basically the same agendas, and actually agendas on a number of different levels that most of the public, the silent majority who aren't engaging in politics because they're being disenfranchised, they're turned off by this. They're not being listened to. There is actually, on another different debate topic, there's a huge opportunity for a new political movement to come through that basically embraces the best bits of the left, the best bits of the centre and the best bits of the right. And that would be a combination of good infrastructures, good public services, and the right for freedom and enterprise as well. But at the moment, we're just getting back to what I was saying, a bunch of politicians like popinjays playing Game of Thrones who are serving themselves, vested interest behind the scenes, but they're not serving the mood of the nation or the needs of the nation. And this has been going on far too long. And there'll be a point where people will react against this. If we have Sunak as Prime Minister, anointed as Prime Minister, but not elected effectively, I think that might be the tipping point for a lot of people.
No, Leilani's right, this two cheeks of the same bottom. That's a very memorable coinage, Leilani. We need a third buttock in British politics. Because the two...
And you know what?
I will keep.
Grey line.
I will. You know what? At this point, Mark, they should just purse out of our misery and install a pantomime Dane to complete this pantomime that's going on. And by the way, it's definitely Poundland Game of Thrones because they're definitely not good.
We've got.
That's right. We're getting mixed metaphors now. A pantomime dame with three buttocks. Thank you, Leilani. Thank you, James. I think I saw that in Huddersfield in like 1987. That is going to do it. Dan Wootton is here to thump your Thursday. What you got, Dan?
Oh my goodness, that was so entertaining, Mark. What a double act. James and Leilani, loved them both. That was brilliant. And was it at the top of the show, Mark, that you were mentioning the Ministry of Aubergines? Can I be the Minister of Aubergine? I think that would be a good job. Wouldn't it?
I think it was artichokes.
Artichokes.
You may not like artichokes. Yeah. It's a great stepping stone to Prime Minister.
Rishi Sunak can be the Secretary of State for artichokes and not Prime Minister, I would say, because, this globalist coup needs to be stopped, and we're covering it all tonight. Although, Mark, it looks like the Boris comeback is on. Lots of people saying that even though the 1922 committee have done their best to make sure he couldn't return to the job, actually he will get those 100 votes from MPs. So anyway, fascinating day. We're covering it all, Mark, between 9 and 11.
Yeah, don't miss it. It's a lively time in Westminster, and you have the best 2 hours of coverage straight ahead, all coming up with Dan. Stay safe, stay free.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A day of blustery showers to come tomorrow. It should be a bit drier in the east compared to today, and everywhere it will again be pretty mild. In fact, mild for the next several days. We've got low pressure moving in, bringing the showers tomorrow. It kind of fizzles out on Saturday, a bit of a gap across the south before another low arrives on Sunday, bringing further bands of showers. Let's get back to tonight, because it's a pretty wet affair across a good part of eastern Scotland. Some heavy bursts mixed in, but that rain easing off as it spreads across the far north. Then something a bit drier, easing off the rain across northeast England, but turning misty with a few fog patches. And then here come the showers into the southwest. Everywhere it's going to be a pretty mild night, double digits for the vast majority. On to Friday's weather. We start with heavy showers for Wales, the Midlands, southwest England. But those showers spread more widely to Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, right across northern England. Much of eastern England will be dry for most of the day, certainly a lot drier than today. But even here, some showers are likely come the late afternoon and into the evening. The winds will be picking up. That means the showers will tend to zip through, but it also means it won't perhaps feel as mild as those temperatures would suggest. Could easily get up to 18 or 19 when the sun comes out between the showers through the south. Plenty more of those showers around tomorrow evening as well across all parts of the country. But as we go through Friday night into Saturday, notice the showers easing off across England and Wales. So here, actually, a decent chance that most of Saturday will be dry and bright with some sunshine. A bit breezy, but not as windy as Friday. Slower moving bands of showers across Scotland and Northern Ireland on Saturday, particularly central and southern Scotland. And later on, we'll see more heavy showers threatening the far southwest. Again, temperatures well above average for the time of year, into the teens, the high teens across the south. Another